As everybody's aware of, Hulk Hogan supposedly has passed away at the age of 71. And many people know that I'm a huge wrestling fan going back to the 80s. Been to many live events. Actually met Hulk Hogan a couple times. Once back in 1987 in South San Francisco. And again in Millbrae, California in 1997 after the Super Bowl pay-per-view that WCW held at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. Now, getting on topic with Hulk Hogan, and as I covered my latest video, Ozzy Osbourne, and of course more recently as well, Malcolm Jamal Warner, and as always, they pass in threes. That number 3 is always involved. And how does this happen? I don't believe they pass in threes. I believe they are removed from the world stage in threes. And there's always suspicious circumstances surrounding the passings. Just as you see here with close friend Jimmy Hart. Of course, anybody that follows wrestling will know. Very famous manager in pro wrestling for many decades. And very close friend of Hulk Hogan. Dispelling the rumors regarding Hulk Hogan's health just 24 hours prior to the so-called passing. Let's take a look here at this news article from just a day prior to Hulk Hogan supposedly passing. And of course, you see Jimmy Hart next to Hulk Hogan. Let's scroll down and see what we find here. What Jimmy Hart has to say about Hogan just a day prior. Here you have it. And Jimmy Hart states on his X account, also known as Twitter, Hulk is doing great. Doing phenomenal. Last night at karaoke with Nick, of course, that's Hulk Hogan's son, was absolutely fantastic baby. So, Jimmy Hart, Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan's son Nick were all at karaoke. It doesn't sound like someone that was doing all that bad. So, this is red flags, very suspicious with everything that's surrounding this whole entire story. Now, that gets an aspect I covered many years ago when it comes to pro wrestling with Vince McMahon, as you see here, and future governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura. These are very powerful people on the world stage. And there's more than meets the eye when it comes to pro wrestling. And that gets into this episode of Saturday Night Live's main event from February 1989. This is something I spotlighted in a video back in 2010, 2011 with Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage in this one segment, as they were part of a tag team called the Mega Powers. And they went against a tag team called the Twin Towers, as you see here with manager Slick, Mean Gene Okerlund. Again, here are the Twin Towers with Slick right in the center. And this is, again, all about predictive programming. And before showing the footage, I must first explain predictive programming for those that do not understand what it means. Predictive programming in the context of media and culture refers to the idea that media, particularly movies and TV shows, subtly prepare audiences for future events, societal changes by presenting them in fictional scenarios. And there are many cases of this that I've shown over the years. Let's get right to it as far as predictive programming when it comes to, once again, the Saturday Night Live's main event from February 1989.
We're going to have one whale of a main event. Twin Towers, take it, Mean Gene.
A key of the African dream and a big boss man. Continue your terrorist attack. Defeat, or should I say demolish, the Twin Towers.
Twin Towers come crumbling down.
And as you can see through this wrestling program, it's programming. It's more than meets the eye once again when it comes to what people believe they're watching. Yes, there's wrestling, there's entertainment, but they also fit in programming to the millions upon millions of people watching on, which they have no idea what is happening, and their subconscious is being programmed for what is to come. Now, that gets into the aspect where the average wrestling fan is clueless to what is happening. They will say things, oh, you believe that the Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan had foreknowledge. No, they're just actors handed a script. And that gets into this individual here, Bruce Pritchard, also known as Brother Love, the character on WWF programming. He started in the WWF back in 1987, became an executive as time went on. And he was a producer for these wrestling events. And again, being the manager for The Undertaker, as you see here, before Paul Bearer took over later on. And here's another image of Brother Love with The Undertaker back from early 1991 when The Undertaker left the NWA/WCW Wrestling to join the WWF. I'm showing The Undertaker because he's very pertinent to this video presentation when it comes to WCW. But first off, let's get to the very important aspect that no one else has covered. And I'm going to cover it for the first time here. I had this in my back pocket for quite a while. Listening to different wrestling podcasts, I heard Bruce Pritchard here once again talk about the Saturday Night Live's main event and the behind-the-scenes undertaking, no pun intended, of the workings behind the scenes with his co-host, as you see here, Conrad Thompson, who is the son-in-law of Ric Flair. Let's get right to it. When it comes to, again, Bruce Pritchard, as you see here with Vince McMahon, and let's take a listen to what is said during this podcast from several years back.
What level of involvement did NBC have in the main event programs that you guys aired with them?
Well, they were co-produced with Dick Emersol's company, and they had a lot of heavy involvement in it. They wrote a lot of scripts, and they had a lot to do with the production of it, and they were very, very much heavily involved. It was co-promotion.
So you just heard that, how Dick Emersol of NBC, and for those that don't know who Dick Emersol is, very powerful TV executive for NBC, as you see here, and the Olympics, being executive producer for several Olympics, including the Barcelona Games, which I'll get into momentarily, but also the NFL. So this man here is involved with pro wrestling, which of course is staged, the NFL as well, which I've covered many times in the past, showing how they're faking, rigging NFL games. So you see how it all works from behind the scenes. And again, Dick Emersol here is considered a legendary sports executive. So this guy's high up. And what's a man like this doing, producing pro wrestling events? Because again, it gets more into the programming than meets the eyes. Not just pro wrestlers fighting each other on stage within a wrestling ring and just talking and screaming at each other. There's more to it. And here you see Dick Emersol and Bruce Pritchard, Gorilla Monsoon, Joey Morella, J.J. Dillon as he joined the WWF after leaving the NWA. And they're backstage during the Saturday Night Live's main event from 1989, producing the whole entire event to be shown on NBC TV. So people really need to get the point how it goes much further than meets the eye once again. And here's Dick Emersol once again in this one photo with George Lucas, another one with predictive programming when it comes to 9/11, Ted Danson, and others. But let's take a look here. Once again, Dick Emersol, and a very important point to mention is again being the executive producer of the Olympics, specifically this one here from the Barcelona Games from back in 1992. I've covered this extensively in the past with this ceremony, the opening ceremony for the Barcelona Games. And what do you see here? The ball with spikes. And what does this look like? I'm not going to go into too much detail, but for those in the know, they will know exactly what this represents clearly. And again, so not only do you have him involved with pro wrestling, like I just showed, when it comes to predictive programming in pro wrestling, he has foreknowledge of many things. And again, that definitely includes what took place 5 years ago on the world stage. Definitely 100%. This man is in the know. And here you see Dick Emersol going over details of the script for a Saturday Night Live's main event, obviously in this WWF wrestling ring, with WWF owner taking instructions from Dick Emersol for the production of this wrestling event. Now, and just several months after the Mega Powers versus the Twin Towers on Saturday Night Live's main event, during the summer, you had SummerSlam, this pay-per-view, which headlined, as you see here, the Twin Towers versus the tag team named Demolition. How obvious can it be when you have these two teams facing each other? There's also, I should mention, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Andre the Giant involved as well. But nonetheless, these two teams faced each other during this event. And during the event itself, this placard was held up high for all to see. Demolition will topple the Twin Towers. And make no mistake about it, this was meant to be spotlighted for the camera to catch. And this person holding up this placard was meant to hold it up for all to see. So again, this is what you have here with more predictive programming. When it comes to WCW wrestling, during the same time frame, you had a tag team in the NWA/WCW named the Skyscrapers. And there were 3 incarnations of the Skyscrapers. The first was Dangerous Dan Spivey, Sid Vicious with manager Teddy Long. And the second one was Dan Spivey with who we know as The Undertaker. He went by the name Mean Mark Callis. And this is why I mentioned The Undertaker earlier. Later being in the WWF before he was The Undertaker, he was a skyscraper in the NWA wrestling organization. And very important to mention as well, during the time frame, there were 2 wrestling tag teams in both WWF wrestling with the name Twin Towers, and in WCW named the Skyscrapers, and you see the Twin Towers in the back. This is not by chance or coincidence. We'll get into Vince McMahon and the owner of WCW Wrestling, Ted Turner, later on. But even though they were competitors, they're both part of the same club of Freemasonry, giving us predictive programming, again with these 2 individuals, Ted Turner and Vince McMahon. And this is a clip I saw live from February 1990 promoting the Wrestle War, as you see here, pay-per-view that took place a little bit later. In Wrestle War, of course, you can see the WW for the 33 when you turn around sideways. But getting back to this promo, this actually took place in Corpus Christi, Texas, where once again you see the Twin Towers in plain sight. Let's take a quick look. And again, this event from Corpus Christi, Texas.
Be done for forever. Dangerous Dan Spivey, the real deal. Mean Mark Kelly, the Skyscrapers.
You heard that with the Skyscrapers. And again, facing the Road Warriors, as you see here. Now the build-up, again, to the Wrestle War 90 pay-per-view. And this is the 1998 version from the WWF. Let's take a look here. I'm not going to show the whole video, but just the very end where you see New York City. And what do you see here? These 2 towers, as we know as the Twin Towers, coming down. And again, predictive programming, a little bit different with the Statue of Liberty and the Empire State Building, but again, it's all mixed in here with the Twin Towers coming down. So it's not just one time, it's not some isolated incidents, it's not some coincidence for all the coincidence theorists out there. Wake up. And that gets into the 2 promotion owners at the time. Of course, Ted Turner, owner of WCW. Just take a look at this Monday Nitro logo. He's the one that's behind this. He wanted to go Monday night against Vince McMahon. Again, they're both working for 2 different promotions, but they're both on the same club. Once again, with WCW Nitro, you turn the WCW sideways. With W and W, you get your 33. And here you see Ted Turner himself with Mean Gene Okerlund in WCW. And obviously, owning the promotion, he was a big wrestling fan. Bought it from Jim Crockett Promotions. And obviously aired on TBS nationwide. And that gets into Vince McMahon. As you see here, and just take a look at the logos throughout the years with WWF, now called WWE, and the evolution of logos. And just take a look at them sideways. Going back to the 80s, you see a variation. Then you see the clear 33 with the F, and then just the 33. Then the very clear 33 And these are all Masons, make no mistake about it. Let's take a look here. First off with Ted Turner. He was born Robert Edward Turner. And the dual 33s when it comes to the name, with Robert first being 33 and Turner being 33. Now let's take a look here at Vince McMahon, who was born Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And you're going to have your dual 33s with Vincent and Kennedy. It's like a game of cards when it comes to the elite with these individuals. Just like I've shown in just about every single video presentation, the Grand Sovereign Commander and the dual 33s. So again, the game of cards being played on the world stage with these two so-called elite involved with pro wrestling and so much more. And of course, a very huge aspect of pro wrestling during the 90s, with Ted Turner's created New World Order organization, headed by Hulk Hogan, which of course this video was all about from the start. Hulk Hogan, his initials, of course, being HH, which is 88. And Hulk Hogan joined in later. It was first Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, the outsiders, that formed the New World Order. Just take a look at here at their names. Kevin Nash, 33 numerology. Scott Hall, 33 numerology. This is not just some amazing coincidence where you have the New World Order, which, of course, George Bush said back in 1991, that is the goal, to have a New World Order headed by the UN. So, again, getting back to the start of the video with predictive programming, they continued on from the 80s to the 90s with the New World Order. And for those that don't understand the number 33, this is a biblical reference to the third or 33% of the fallen angels, or as stars. As I mentioned before many times, stars and fallen angels are interchangeable. And this is what it's about with these occultists that run this world. And many in society have no clue what is taking place in this world. And it reminds me of this quote by Noam Chomsky. By no means is he a hero, but definitely telling the absolute truth. The general population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't even know that it doesn't know.
John chapter 9, verse 25. Whereas once I was blind, now I can see.